Call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, all members are present. Approval of the agenda. We have a few additions. Under 6E would be a recap of the water and light meeting public utilities that I attended. On 7B, appointing fire department officers, I also want to make an announcement for who would take over as acting mayor on that same page. We'll change the resolution when we get to that. And 7E, appoint public works seasonal employee. Is there any other changes, council? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with those changes?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Heidi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes, the January 2nd, 2020 regular meeting. You all received them in your packet. Is there any corrections, changes, clarification needed?
I've seen one correction under the public hearing for Michael Kessler. The vote of record was 3-4, 1 against. Was Councilmember Leach was against, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
Right. Yep. Okay. Nikki, you got that change? Okay. Anything else? Do I have a motion to approve the January 2nd, 2020 meeting with that change?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane,
I'll second.
second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. This now brings us to our public open forum. We do have 2 public hearings tonight. They will come later. This is for a public forum that anyone that wants to speak to us about anything other than what's on the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Is there anyone that would like to speak? With that, also with public comments, we're going to have public comments on the body-worn cameras for the Sauk Center Police Department.
Well, this is the public comment section for the body-worn cameras. As we work through the process of implementing the camera program, there are several steps that we have to take. We must take written and emailed comments on the program, and we must allow for public comment at a city council meeting. We did outreach to the city's website and Facebook and the police department's Facebook to let people know that they could comment on it. We will be posting the policy once we're done with it on the city website, and with the expectation that it would come back to the city council for adoption on the February 5th meeting. So there'll be ample time there for people to read it as well. The reason for the public comment is to talk about the general issues relating to the implementation of the program. There's some people that they're concerned with how we would use the body-worn cameras. So the city budgeted for the program for 2020. If you recall that during the budget process, that was one of the things that we left in the budget. The police department personnel have attended training on the issues relative to the program, and Sergeant Jensen has been the one that's been spearheading that program. And we are working on the policy regarding issues, and I'll just kind of give a couple highlights of the issues so you know what's in the policy and so people know that's what's in there. It talks about the data classification, who has access to the procedures and the retention, because you will collect that data as they're wearing that, and then what happens to it and who has access to it. There's procedures for testing the recording equipment. There's to document malfunction reports and to address malfunctions. So like, why wasn't it on if it wasn't on when it should have been? It has to be documented. And there's circumstances under which recording is mandatory or when it's prohibited, or if it's left to the officer's discretion. So when you go through the policy, these are the situations when you must use it, these are the ones where it's discretionary, and when then there's other times when it may be prohibited. It also has circumstances when the officers might tell the people when they're being recorded. There's guidelines for when you end the recording. You can't just turn it off. You have to say that's the end of the recording so people realize it didn't get shut off, you know, mid-conversation. There's procedures for the storage of the data and how to create backups. And then there's also procedures to ensure compliance with the policy and to address violations. And then there's the record retention guidelines for how long they have to do it. So we will be posting it for public comment on the website for everybody to look at. I think one thing that people are most concerned about with the body-worn cameras is the data. The data, it's public data, but it is presumptively private. So it's data we collect, it's presumptively private. And a lot of people feel like it's public data, anybody can see it. Body-worn cameras is presumptively private. And then there's some times that it can be released or shall be released. There's some things like if the subject to the data wants it released, then it can be released. If it's part of a use of force, it's public. If it's discharge of a firearm, it might be public. But a lot of the data is private data. It can be accessed by the subject of the data, but it can't be like published out there for general review. So when people have concerns about what we're doing with that data, it is very, very strict at the state level and in the law of how that can be used. And I don't know if Joe or Brian, you have any additional comments, if I covered what needs to be covered, if anybody has any questions about the policy. The council's had the opportunity to review it, and it's not in its final form yet, but we'll be getting that together in the coming days, and we'll have that posted.
Yeah, we can cover it very well. I think we're just looking for any comments from the public to kind of help curtail our policy we're putting together for it. So, people, Facebook us or come in, stop in and have questions, and we can take that, information and try to work it into our policy. Basically have it pretty much all figured out, most of the policy, and Joe's worked very hard putting it together. So any top questions from citizens would just greatly appreciate it, and concerns. So we welcome anyone to come in and talk to us, and give us some feedback or input.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Council have any questions?
No.
Okay. Then we will recess our regular council meeting and move on to our public hearings. We have public hearing between a...
No, you don't get out there.
Oh,
So,
Chief?
yeah. How is that sewer? You need to take your time, one at a time. Okay, we're a little excited. We're gonna step out of food,
okay, we have a public hearing before us this evening regarding the 2020 street improvement project and the 2020 street improvement assessment, which will be held concurrently. It is our intention that everyone has the opportunity to be heard. If you wish to speak, please sign in on the sign-up sheet at the back of the room. The procedure is as follows. Presentation by staff, followed by questions of staff. Then we will have public input. Raise your hand. When recognized by the mayor, approach the podium and state your name and address for the record. State your comments and position. No one will be allowed to speak a second time until everyone has had a chance to be heard. First, we will hear questions for clarification. Secondly, public in favor of the proposal. Then third, public speaking against the proposal. After everyone who wishes to speak has had the opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed. After closure of the public hearing, the council will deliberate and take action as appropriate. Audience do not participate in the council's discussion unless a majority of the council concedes to hear additional information or questions. The hearing is now in session.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. First, just introduce myself to everyone here. I'm Keith Yap, the city engineer. With me here is Chuck Bozer, the assistant engineer. We'll both be kind of tag teaming a little bit on this presentation. This hearing is actually kind of a combined, so it's normally for the improvements where we go through a little more detail on the project for the council to see and public to be able to see that, and also the public hearing at the same time. So the presentation is going to be a little longer than normal for a public hearing, but it'll be all sorts of detailed information that hopefully will be very informative for you. So Chuck, if you can move forward. This is the project location map. We have 3 different areas of the project that we're looking at here. The first one is on the north side there. You see it's kind of in brown. That's the Elm Street North and Lake Street North area. We have a central area that's in purple. That is the Elm Street South area, as we call it. And then the red on the south area, there's actually 2 different areas there. One is 10th Street South, which is East-West Street there, as well as then the Civic Arena parking lot. So that's the areas that we're talking about with this public hearing. Existing infrastructure condition, the North Elm and Lake Street area, that water main and sanitary sewer is aged. It was installed originally back in the 1950s for most of it. Water main is undersized for regional system distribution. That was actually identified way back in 1995 that we don't have enough fire flows in that area to provide for firefighting needs. Storm sewer, we have, it drains directly into Sauk Lake without any treatment, and it also has lack of adequate structures to provide for that drainage right at that corner there. The streets are aged, deteriorating. There's no flexibility. The pavement is cracking. The foundation is failing there. They're old streets. Lake Street also is a narrower street. It's 8 foot narrower than 4 feet narrower than most of our streets. It's 8 feet for this, for narrower than our normal streets. Normally our residential streets are 36 foot face to face. You'll see the design, what we're thinking about for this in a little bit. South Elm Street, water main and sanitary. Once again, it's aged and failing. It's very old in there. There's numerous sanitary backups that have occurred there. Jetting happens. We have to do that multiple times a year just to keep the sanitary sewer flowing through there. A lot of roots and those kinds of things are problems in that area. Once again, the water main is undersized in that area as well. Storm drains, once again, it drains directly in Sauk Lake. Now, we've dealt with some of that through other projects that have happened before this for South Elm Street. And the street itself, once again, is aged, it's alligator cracked, it's lacking its flexibility. The pavement is simply is wore out, and it's too wore out in order to do a mill and an overlay any longer. Portions of the curb are also deteriorated in that section. 10th Street South, in that area, the water main and the sanitary sewer, PVC is actually in good condition. It was actually not put in too terribly long ago. Everything is fine from a utility standpoint. The stormwater, the curb drains down to belt line and goes into the ditch through there. No real issues with stormwater there. The problems on 10th Street is the street itself. It's aging, it's deteriorating. Actually, it's actually deteriorating prior to its life. There's no flexibility in there. The foundation essentially is failing in there due to groundwater issues, which I neglected to say in that north project. Primarily, we believe that's related to groundwater issues as well that's causing the street to fall apart through those areas. We see the same thing in our parking lot area across the street as well in the Civic Arena. It's the elevated groundwater, and it's not allowing that structural strength below the pavement, and the pavement is failing and it's falling apart. So it lacks that sub-drainage. The Civic Arena parking lot is similar. It's aged, it's deteriorating. We don't have the flexibility. We don't have that foundation drainage. There's too much groundwater in there. It's close to the surface, and we don't have strength for that foundation in order to hold the traffic that's up above it. So those are the issues through there. If you want to go to the next, Chuck. I think with this, I think you're going to take over, Chuck, and go through some of the details.
So I'll walk you through more of the proposed improvements that we propose on these project sections. So for the north, Elm Street and Lake Street, we propose to replace the sanitary and water mains. The existing water main 6-inch, we're going to increase that to 8-inch for fire flows. New services out to the right-of-way. We propose to replace the existing street section. Lake Street is an existing 30 foot roughly width, and Elm is 36. There's two options for the Elm Street portion that I'll walk you through in a little bit. We plan to replace the sidewalk along Lake Street, and another option is to add sidewalk on the west side of Elm Street and connect it up to 4th Street. So that's being proposed as well. The existing storm sewer currently drains the Sauk Lake. We plan is to add a few more structures in the low area to adequately drain that, to help with some larger events, to get the water out more quickly. So this visual shows you the existing right-of-way on Elm and Lake. The current right-of-way on Elm is 40 feet at its narrowest. Currently it's not wide enough for us to do our construction. The current right-of-way width.
This is this blue line here, that's the current right-of-way.
Yep. The curved greener, yellower line is existing curb. So in our proposed options, we have additional permanent easement included in those. The existing right-of-way on Lake Street is 50-foot width. There we have enough room to replace the 32-foot wide road. So sometimes it's nice to look at a profile picture of the road. I'll kind of walk you through a little bit of this. This is what the Elm Street North proposed 32-foot section would look like. We'd have sidewalk on the left side. Boulevard would be 3 feet. This is with the 50-foot wide option. The other option is to go 60 feet wide for the new right-of-way, and that would be a 36-foot, which I think is next. Yeah, so this is excuse me, one slide might be a mistake, but so the two options for Elm Street North is a 32-foot wide section or a 36-foot. I have another graphic here to show you. So this is the 50-foot wide right-of-way. So we propose to purchase 5 feet on both sides. So get to a minimum of 50 feet. There we can fit a 32-foot wide roadway face-to-face in. The boulevard would end up around 5.5 feet with the sidewalk on the west side. The other option is the 60-foot wide, so 10 feet on both sides. Get to that minimum 60 feet. The boulevard would end up around 6.5 feet with the sidewalk again on the west side. So those are the options for Elm. Lake, we think like I said, we can go with the 32-foot wide one, but we can come back to those two options, discuss further along. So if we jump to the Elm Street South portion of the project, there you can see the two blocks that we plan to reconstruct. We'll be replacing the sanitary, the water main, again, services out to the right-of-way. This section has a 36-foot wide roadway. We plan to replace it again with a 36-foot wide roadway. Basically the same as it is today. Sidewalks on both sides. The options for this one is on the south side, the intersection with Grove Lake. We'll be showing you two options for that intersection to kind of better direct traffic. Now it's all pavement right now. There's no really direction, or we're not directing traffic there very efficiently. So we propose on two options for that. This again just gives you a profile picture of the Elm Street South roadway. So you can see the sidewalk on both sides. The roadway face-to-face is 36 feet. The boulevard will be a typical and desirable 8 feet wide. So this is option one that we're proposing. So this would curve Elm Street and extend the curb all the way to Grove Lake and align to the 6th Street center line with the new Elm Street center line.
Want to describe what it is?
The option?
Yeah, ding dong and this.
Sure. Yep, so yeah, you can see ding dong in the top left part of your screen. The parking lot there, we have Grove Lake, 6th Street on the right. So if I back up, you can kind of see the intersection revision area there. Maybe it's right along the trail, the Wabagon Trail area. So this option again would be aligning the center lines with 6th Street. The Second option, we propose to come a little further south and to get the road perpendicular with Grove Lake. And then for a future 6th Street configuration, we propose on doing the same thing on the right side of your screen. So it's a street jog, if you say that. We'll walk you through some pros and cons here in a little bit, but or on the next slide, I think. Yep. So if you look at pros and cons on the two options, the safer stop movement for vehicles is clearly going to be option 2. It's perpendicular. There's not a skew, so you can look right or left safely there. You're not looking back over your shoulder. It's a safer pedestrian crossing as well for option 2. It's a shorter distance at the intersection for pedestrians to cross the road. Option 1 does maintain the current traffic pattern today, which with the center lines aligned. Option 1 also keeps the center line aligned with 6th Street. Option 2 does, it's in accordance with the city ordinance on the intersection skews, and the wording says 80 degrees is the minimum, perpendicular is desired, which we have proposed for option 2. The option 2 is also better for or it's in accordance with the minimum street jog, 125, and those are for new streets too. You know, new developments, we're trying to fit something in that's existing, but it does meet both those requirements. And both options do impact the parking area there by Ding Dong. So just wanted to walk you through the pros and cons of those options. So if we jump to 10th Street, again, as Keith said, the majority of these improvements on 10th are street related. No utilities are being proposed. The street basically is lacking a sub-drainage section. We're just having the groundwater is causing a failure in the aggregate base of the road. It's losing stability and strength. And what a sub-drainage section will do, it'll wick the water away, allow it to drain through drain tile, and leave the aggregate base of the roadway kind of high and dry and with its strength. So that's what we propose. It's a 36-foot wide roadway today, and we propose the same roadway back. We would add a new driveway to the parking lot arena area for additional exit and entrance there. We would also add a couple structures along the Beltline roadway there on the left side of your screen. So this kind of gives you a shot of what 10th Street looks like today. You can see the impacts the groundwater have in the middle of your screen. This picture is from 2016, before the road really started to bust up completely. And you can see where the wetter areas are, so that is the groundwater, what you're seeing. So, and now today, I think this last year, the city reclaimed or milled up the surface to make it a gravel road, so there need to be some improvements there. And it's the same, we're seeing the same thing for the parking lot arena as well. I mean, it's right next to it. It's same groundwater. It's the same cause of the pavement failing. And this kind of shows you a good visual of the large block cracking that we're seeing in the parking lot. You can imagine those individual pieces are moving every year with the freeze-thaw cycles, and it just keeps breaking up the pavement slowly. And this picture is from 2016 as well, so it's much worse today. And it's just now it's starting to kind of blow up on us. So we are proposing in this project for a sub-drainage section for this parking lot as well, which will handle that groundwater with drain tile, as you can kind of see from this picture. If Keith wants to point out the dashed lines there, we'll be running drain tile in the sub-drainage section to get rid of the groundwater and drain to the existing storm sewer along Center Street. These are just some pictures of this year, this fall. You can see the water is literally coming out of the pavement, and it kind of blowing up the pavement, as I'm sure everybody's aware of. So after we talked about all the improvements that are proposed, the goals we look at for this project, So replace the aging infrastructure. A lot of the utilities are from the 1950s and are failing, so we'll be replacing those to get the water main up to a good capacity and adequate fire flows. Storm sewer as well to help with some drainage issues around the projects. And then the streets, and replace those aging roadways as well, since they're well past their design life and expectancy. So those are the goals we hope to accomplish with this project. Now I'll kind of walk you through a real quick summary of the project costs, what they came out to be with the preliminary assessments you guys have. So we look at the different segments. This is the Elm Street North and Lake Street North portion. So the 38% is the 38% of the project costs are accessible costs. 20% are included for city costs, and the 42% is included for the PUC costs, which includes utilities, and then the total project costs came out to be about $567,000. For the Elm Street South portion, the accessible costs came out to be about 36% of the total project costs. The cities ran about 22.5%, and the PUC again was around that 41%. And the total project cost was around $614,000. So for the 10th Street portion, there the accessible cost, since it's only street costs and city ordinance is 50% of the street costs get assessed. This one was kind of split down the middle between accessible costs and city costs. And the total to replace that roadway with the sub-drainage section is the $197,000. Now the Civic Arena, there it's all either city owned, but it's 100% accessible costs. The project costs ran around $435,000. It's just a large parking lot with a lot of materials. So that's the kind of a summary of the individual costs and where they broke out between the accessible, city, and PUC. Here's kind of a total for the, these are just, so these are the three portions, the Elm Street North, Elm Street South, and 10th Street. There the total project costs came just under $1.4 million. And you can kind of see the percentages on the bottom, 39 for the accessible costs, cities ran around 25%, and PUC around 36%.
Chuck, at least do you want to tell about what the PUC pays for and what the city costs in general are, those splits?
Sure. So PUC pays for the water main and the sanitary main. The city pays for 50% of the storm sewer and 50% of the street costs. The accessible costs include the other 50% of the street costs, the other 50% of the storm costs, and all of the service costs for the water and sanitary services out to the right-of-ways. So that's what's included for those three. And this last one just includes the arena parking lot if the city decides to go with that. Now there are options that we can talk about further, but that's what we're proposing now today. So, and that total is $1.8 million for all four portions of this project. So that, we kind of ran through it pretty quick there. Now we can leave it open to questions or.
I'll send it back first to the council, to the mayor. There were a few things that are kind of question marks in there, because this is kind of a combined. So if the council wishes maybe to talk about some of those design issues prior to getting public comment or not, I'll leave that certainly up to you to decide how you want to do that. But this is a little bit odd. It's kind of a combined presentation. So, but I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Okay. Does the council got any questions as far as the presentation or anything they want to go back over?
I had a question about the arena parking lot and the drain tile. It seemed a little much.
Sure. So this is kind of typical. We've done this. Excuse me. Yeah. Sure. So we've done this before in parking lots. the drain tile you see, the lines, they would it'd be about 4-inch PVC drain tile we propose on using. They would connect to a larger drain tile on the south or east side, the bottom of your screen, and go to the storm sewer. It's the same kind of concept as they use in field drain tile systems. You know, you want to collect that water
Right.
and get to it. I think the spacing on that's around 50, 75 feet, which is pretty typical for that kind of area.
On the street, if you think about it that perspective, it's 1.5 times if we did on either side of the street.
Yep.
It's a small picture and it kind of makes it look like it's real close, but it's really not.
The bulk of the costs for the Civic Arena are going to be the materials, the bituminous, the Class 5, and the sand. For the drain tile will be, smaller portion.
Okay.
Any other questions? The only question I had was on that intersection by the south end of Elm,
Sure.
by the ding dong.
Yep.
I was looking at, you got that triangle, you know, on that picture there's that triangle on the north corner. What's that gonna be, or
Sure.
what's your viewpoint?
So we discussed.
Just for public, you're talking this here.
I'm talking that section
Oh,
right
that's-
there, yeah. Is that gonna be landowner, or is that just gonna be concrete, or is it something more the city's gonna have to maintain?
Sure. So right now, we propose just a grass area. There may be a chance to do some, I haven't looked at the soils up there yet, but to do an infiltration pond. We may need some storm improvements in that area and intersection. We haven't got to that in our design yet, but at this point, we'd be looking at just a grass area.
And because that is right-of-way, that could be vacated and dedicated back to the adjacent landowner. So that could be an option to be done through there if we didn't use it for any other public purpose. So that could be done through there. The 6th Street that's shown on this configuration on the other side, you know, on the east side, that really is not meant to be done with this project. It could be, but it's not meant to be. That's why the label is future through there.
So if you can go back to the other picture. What I was wondering, you know, and maybe Ben can come up to me on when it comes to plowing and doing any road maintenance, you know, the less corners you gotta go around with the plow and wing, the better. I don't know, what's your feeling, Ben, as far as your guys gotta work around it?
This option here is a lot harder to plow and maintain versus the other option.
Okay,
So the other option would be better for us to plow, for sure.
okay,
And if you went with the other option and that area turned to grass, we have stuff in that area that we mow now anyways, so it wouldn't add a lot of time to maintain that if we needed to.
okay. And that's one of the options that we're gonna have to do tonight as far as,
Well,
Or-
whether you want to give any guidance as to what you might be thinking of for the public.
Okay.
Any comments, I'm not sure, but
well, once we get some public comment, we'll, might have a better idea. But for right now, I wanted to clarify, you know, which one is gonna be better for us as maintenance, so we're not increasing our costs. And, how confusing it is. Everybody's been driving the same pattern out there in that area for the last 40, 50 years, so to all of a sudden change it is,
one thing I wanted to just point out, just so everyone knows, there is kind of an alley that goes back. There's a couple of garages back in here. So that's what you're seeing right here. So that's how that would enter back onto the street. So that's not cut off from those folks.
so you'd basically either way, then, the parking lot by the ding dong, that would be their requirement to maintain and do snow removal on? It wouldn't be us anymore?
The part that's off the street
Right. Would be-
we would no
basically
longer
be
be
theirs.
maintaining that.
Okay,
You know, and technically our right-of-way, this is actually Elm and 6th. In reality, the right-of-way is current is Elm Street and Sixth Street. So they're technically, this piece
Okay.
is Sixth Street through here, but it just sort of all meshes together into one big intersection. This would sort of, in a way, clean it up. It almost, I would say that's Elm, and in this option, that's probably no longer Sixth Street, that's Elm Street through here. We'd get rid of, potentially get rid of that right-of-way through here, or at least not utilize it as right-of-way.
Okay. Council have any other questions?
I have a question on the Elm Street North and the right-of-way easement purchase. This is my first, obviously, street improvement. How does that process work? Do we have to purchase that from the existing landowners then, or?
Right. The way that easements work is we come up with first of all, what the easement is and describe what that easement is. And we work with the landowners for a fair price, and that's all done individually with those landowners to come up with a cost for the easement, and we purchase it.
Okay.
They're all individual purchases.
Okay.
And it's not, remember, these are easements, they're not full takes. However, with right-of-way, generally, you pretty much use the majority, so you're probably buying nearly 100% of the use of that land.
Okay, thank you.
So I was going to comment further on the 2018 project that you may not have been a part of, but maybe caught the tail end of it. We had some easement purchases up there in the alley between Lakeshore and Elm. So it'd be kind of the same process as that. I kind of have some rough costs for those easements, for this easement. So the 5-foot easement roughly would be around $9,000. And the 10-foot easement total would be around $18,000, and that's based on the similar cost that we paid for up on that 2018 project.
And that's total,
That's total.
Okay,
Okay.
that was my next question.
Yep, that's total.
Yeah, total, not per parcel, okay.
And those are included in our contingency of these costs that we already showed you. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council? And then we will go to public input. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the council for clarification on any of these projects that we discussed about? If you do, you want to go to the podium and... Yes, you do. State your name and address, please.
I have a lot of questions.
Okay, that's...
The first question I have is, I'm Dana Boucher, by the way. I have to say that legally, right?
Yep.
Okay. The first question about line, I got the notice from the city, and it's a big dollar amount. Is there a line item breakdown of what I'm paying for or what property owners are paying for, and is that available to us? I looked online, I couldn't find it. The south.
It's on South
Elm
Elm.
Street South. Yep. So is that the sheet there? Because that looks like a line item there. Can we have copies?
Boucher.
Can
Dana
the
Boucher.
citizens get copies, or the property owners?
Be number 210 and 213.
So you're right here.
Yeah.
If you want the breakdown between the street, sidewalk, your services, and your storm sewer, it's all right there.
Okay, give me a moment here to catch myself here.
No, that's fine.
Woo, okay. So what I read here is that the sidewalks are gonna be ripped out and replaced?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Then, what's this here? Sanitary sewer, the sewer stubs?
Right.
Okay,
That's paid by the PUC.
You would have a service on there, so the only thing that's sanitary that you would have would be the service, which the individual homeowners own the service from.
The main.
From the utility main in the street out to their house, they own.
okay. Do all properties require that? Even if they don't have, if they're not hooked into the sewer right now, they'll still require it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, what's this? Water service, so that's water stops? Okay. And then street, that would be the pavement and the curb and gutter, okay.
Everything that you kind of saw in that street section, all
Okay, and aprons too, is that part of this? Is that factored in, aprons? Okay. Then I'm just glancing at this here. It looks like you have like a linear foot rate. Is that how the property? So $114 roughly linear foot, I think I'm seeing here on our, because everybody has the same one here. Okay. Okay.
Maybe if I could just answer one question so everyone can hear and the people at home. So they are, like, streets are all by lineal foot, and that's by the frontage of your property that's along that street. If you're a side lot, and I'm not sure, I think there's a couple sides, what happens is you pay for if it's your side yard, you pay for anything that's over 150 feet in depth for the side yard. So anyone that might be a side yard on it, it would be a smaller amount because it would be less than 150 feet. If it's the frontage, then it's the full frontage of your lot for that front foot basis.
And then, okay, I'm looking at storm sewers. That looks like square foot. Is that how
That's correct.
that's calculated? Is there a differentiation between porous surface and non-porous?
Not for those assessments, there's not.
Okay, so a hard roof is counted the same as grass?
It's by lot size.
Lot size, okay, that's what I'm asking. Can people get copies of this? Can you run these off? I mean, this is public information, right here?
We've been providing people for their calling.
Oh,
It's just,
okay. Well, I apologize, I waited till the meeting, I was being polite. If I could get a, full copy here, okay. Just let me. Then, okay, on this, is there a difference in what you charge residents for the type of road they're on? Like a residential road versus a thoroughfare?
Sorry, we kind of go back and forth. Yes, there is. If it's a normal residential street, if it's what we call a collector street, then the city actually pays a higher percentage because then we actually have a thicker section for the pavement, so it's a stronger roadway for that traffic, so the city picks up that difference. But we don't have that in any one of these particular streets that we're talking about tonight.
What's a collector street?
The official definition is by one that the majority of traffic from the neighborhood comes out. Like Ash Street is a good example of a collector street. Obviously, Sinclair Lewis would be, though that's a county road as well, but that would be an example of something similar.
Oh, is this going to be available online? This PowerPoint or this, what you're running it from here? Okay, great.
Yep.
I don't expect an answer right now because maybe you can do some discussion, but the timeline, I don't think that was dealt with, like the start of the project and the end.
I can address it in general. We don't have the specifics, but we'd be looking at if the council chooses to go forward with the project. We'll finish the plans and specifications. This project would be bid we're looking at early, sometime, maybe late March if we're lucky. We're hoping to, the sooner the better. The project would start probably in like the 1st of August, June roughly, and go through. Now, these are 3 succinct areas, so we'd expect, the way we would draw it up is so they sort of finish one area, do another area, so that, now it might be concurrently, whereas example, the North Project, let's just say they start up there. They do the sewer and water up there, and then they move to another section, while the street portion is being worked on the north, and then they just kind of leapfrog down, And it might be south to north or north to south. I can't speak for exactly how that would, but generally that's how it would go. We would expect this project to be done sometime in the early fall.
Okay, then I have just one question on the reconfiguration of Elm Street South, the intersection.
And Anderson.
Just a couple questions and clarifications. So I think on both of the proposals, there will be a sidewalk on both sides, or that's a sidewalk running on the ding-dong side or on the west side? Okay. Then I have a personal question. What's that little squiggly rough stuff at the very top? That's adjacent, yeah, it looks like that, but it's on the very top on the east side. That's next to my property. It's making me kind of concerned. What is that?
East side, over here.
Yeah.
That's a driveway. So that's replaced driveways, and
Okay.
and actually these are aprons, are they not?
Okay. I can assure you there's no driveway there right now. So maybe the snow.
You're talking this one here?
Yeah, right there. Right, at the very top, right, it cuts off right at the very top.
There's a couple
Okay.
driveways that aren't really there.
I don't want to wake up and all of a sudden there's a truck running. I just want to make sure on that.
driveway.
All right. And then just, I appreciate, you know, the idea of redesigning that intersection. And I just want to point out, and I don't know if you've taken this into account, but there's a lot of frost damage on that intersection, partly because snow gets piled up on right along the bike trail there. And you know, when I go to school in the morning, when I go to work, the road is completely frozen. And I come home and it's just water running because those piles keep melting well into May and such. So I would just suggest looking at that, you know, to keep this road from
The
that.
part that we see when the pavement is so large out here, it sort of acts more like a parking lot because it doesn't know where to run. The water just sort of sits there a lot of the time. This, take either option, frankly, makes that better. It really defines more of a road versus a large parking area.
You
Okay.
can see the dark area in the parking lot where the water generally sits, and that's the wet area. That's where you're gonna have some pavement damage through that water moisture, so.
No further questions.
Thank you. They were all good questions. One thing I want to just mention is kind of on the history on how this all came about, because I'm not sure if everybody realizes how this happened. The council, I should say, had a few residents up on the Lake Street and North Elm area mentioned to us how bad that road's falling apart and asking us when they were going to be on the docket to get it done. So we started to look at it. Then at the same time on the South Elm, Public Utilities had come and talked to us about the sewer breakdowns and other issues that they were having and wanting to know when we were gonna plan on doing the road so they could plan on their budget to get it fixed so nobody has a major setback because of a sanitary sewer collapse. And then up on the 10th Street and the parking lot, that was basically a council decision. As long as we're looking at 3 smaller projects, that maybe if we can't throw that, or 2 small projects, if we couldn't add that one in and see what the numbers would come out. And that's basically how we got to this point. So just a little history, and I don't think I spoke wrong on any of it, but that's basically how the council got to where you got the notice that we're looking at this, and to get it done so we can get favorable bids this spring, we had to basically put this on a fast track, because the longer we wait, the higher the price is gonna go as far as getting a contractor that can do it. So, with that said, is there anyone else that would like to speak to the council? State your name, address.
My name is Andrew Waldorf, and I live at 302 Elm Street North. I actually live right at the corner of Elm and Lake Street.
Okay.
So I do have a question. I know that there was a discussion about, I think, having a 50-foot wide and a 60-foot wide. What is the benefit of it being wider or more narrow? I guess there's like a proposal for having one wider, one narrower. What's the benefit of either or?
To answer that, in terms of the right-of-way, it really depends on the road width. And we're talking about a 32-foot road or a 36-foot road, and we're also talking about extending and having a sidewalk on the west side of Elm Street. So that's really the biggest thing. With a 32-foot roadway, normally with a 36-foot, you allow parking on either side of the road. The theory is that they're generally not parked exactly opposite each other all the time, so two-way traffic can get through. With a 32-foot, that's not possible. So then we would end up having to do no parking on one side of the roadway in order to make a 32-foot roadway work. So there's some drawbacks to that from a parking perspective. That may or may not be an issue for the landowners. Everyone might have their different opinions upon that. But we know that there's parking that occurs on on Elm Street, probably related to the hospital that occurs. So it makes it a little bit narrower. There's things that happen on there. So I know that the Public Works is more favorable on a 36-foot roadway there versus a 32-foot roadway because there's that parking that occurs on a kind of continual basis, especially on that north end of Elm.
Is it possible to, say, have it narrow on one end of the street and widen it towards the hospital side where there would be more parking that may be needed? Or is that not possible?
Anything's possible. It's possible to do that. Would that be desirable? I would say no, because you end up having that necking down. That usually causes issues with traffic, especially causes issues like in this time of year when there's snow on the ground. People don't see it as well. It's harder for maintain it when there's things that change in the middle of the roadway for the plows to be able to follow that, so it becomes an issue. We are actually looking at Lake Street being 32, so if you think about it sort of as an L-shaped street combined, you know, it is kind of the difference. There's a 32-foot that goes one block, and there could be a 36-foot that goes another block.
Well, I guess one of my reasons for asking is because if you take 10 feet off the front of my house, then I might have to redo steps because it's going to come up right up to the edge of some steps that go up to my second floor. Then, you know, the other part of that is what you can't see on here is that the slope in front of my house goes between 8 to 10 feet. It goes out for a while and it drops at about a 35 to 45 degree angle towards the street. So now if we cut it back 10 feet, that whole slope in front of my house is going to have to be redone.
Can you go to the graphic just so we can show the house on it?
On one of the other slides, it's right there.
Yeah, so could you point to, or
He's right on the corner,
I'm right here on the corner.
inside corner.
Here, these are my two, right there, those are my two. So you take 10 feet off that now.
So-
The south side on Lake Street, to me, that's not that big of a deal. I mean, I have some trees along there.
the simple answer is the roadway on that side is not going to change. In fact, we're looking at the curb would essentially be right where the curb is now. So there really wouldn't be any change on that side. So don't think of that we're necessarily, that whole thing's going to be used. It's going to be a street in that 10 feet. No, that becomes a boulevard area through there. So it's still essentially exactly the way it is now for in your particular case. On both sides. Both streets. Now, the only difference would be on Elm Street on the west side where there would be a sidewalk on that side. That really would be the only difference with the 36-foot wide scenario street. There'll be a sidewalk on that, but everything else would be the same.
Essentially, they're not going to widen it at all.
No. The street will be either narrower if the 32-foot option is chosen, or it'd be exactly the same as it is now.
I guess I'm just trying to understand, because I know on your graphics, you have a change between the 5-foot easement and a 10-foot easement. So I guess I'm trying to understand, is it going to take 5 feet or 10? And because you're saying it's not going to change anything, but I guess I'm trying to understand. If you widen the street, how is that not going to change it?
But the street now is 36 feet wide.
Oh, so
Okay,
that's...
so it's not, if we go with the 36-foot wide, the road will be exactly where it is now. It'll just be a new road in the same exact location. What we're doing is we don't have, maybe you can go to the right-of-way one, that might be easier. We don't have boulevard on either side. In particular, as soon as he gets to it, I'll show that here. Actually, let me take this. So kind of where you're at, we actually have some right-of-way on this side, but you'll see like up through here, the right-of-way is basically right on the curb line. So we don't have any boulevard that is actually city-owned or leased, or excuse me, an easement anywhere. Is from here up here, same thing in this north end here, same thing all the way down here. The road is essentially right on the right-of-way line. So there isn't any city boulevard in this area. You happen to have some on your house. Now, on your side, as an example, specifically to you, the easements that will be up and through here, you probably, if anything, it would be very minimal. It might not be anything, actually, on your particular property through here.
If you can see where my driveway is,
Yep.
north of that, those are the steps that are in front of
Yep.
the house. So you can see that, if you come in towards my house.
Right.
it'll be
But we won't, as I mentioned, we will not be coming in. The road is staying right here. So nothing is moving physically towards your house. The only thing would be, that would actually be dug in through here would be the services. I'm not sure if you, at this point, I don't know if your service comes here or comes off here, but, yeah.
I understand
Yeah.
that there's going to be some changes coming from that, so.
Get this so you can be picked up for the folks at home too.
And like I know it was mentioned that this would be available online, because I know my wife is going to have questions on this, and I want to be able to explain it to her.
We should be able to get it, for all of you, we should be able to get it to this city, unless we have a jump drive, even tonight, but tomorrow we can get it here, and as soon as we can get it uploaded, you should be able to see it on the city website.
So I guess my last question is, and I apologize, I think I emailed Ms. Willer about meeting with you about the notice I got about the proposed assessment amounts. And so my question is that something that's going to be a one-time charge, or are they going to spread this out over a period of number of years?
Generally 10 years.
10 years, okay. And my question, and my reasoning for asking that is because my assessment is over $15,000 for my two parcels. And if I get that as a one-time bill, I'm gonna have to sell my house because I can't afford that.
Just for everyone, kind of in general, assessments, the way they work, is they're split over, the council ultimately decides the length of that term. It can be anywhere from 10 years to 15 years. Typically, I think recently, everything's been 15 years that the council's done anything recently. And there's interest on that. You pay that twice a year with your taxes. You can pay it early. You have a little extra windfall came in, you can put extra money towards that. You can do that anytime with, everything goes through the county in terms of your taxes.
This will change, since it's got 2 waters and 2 sewers.
Well, I
Yeah.
guess that would be another question, because, I mean, I have 2 parcels, but I only have 1 house. So why do I need 2 waters, 2 sewers?
Well, and that's something we'll deal with the detailed design. If you're the owner of that, if we'll probably have you say that you don't want a service on that, have you come in and sign something that you don't want to do that. What happens is if somebody, a year from now, someone wants that property and you think, oh gosh, I'd like to sell that, now it no longer has the ability to easily hook up to sewer and water to build a house there. Someone now has to dig into the street to connect, and it becomes more onerous to do that. So there are some drawbacks of not having them there, but that's something that could be allowed. But it would probably be something that we would have to have you sign off that you willingly said, I don't want sewer and water service for that lot. We won't put one in.
Well, and when that time comes, if they could at least notify me or ask me that question, because
Yeah.
that's a decision I'd have to make in the future. I don't necessarily think I'd want those services, so that would definitely bring my proposed amount down, correct?
Right.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
It's a lot to take in. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Go right ahead. State your name and address, please.
My name is Betty Denzer. I live at 520 Lake Street North. The east side of my property abuts the west side of the car wash exit. And I was wondering if you're going to put a drain at the end of there, because right now it's always tore up from all the water, the soap, the wax, and everything that comes down. It also goes across the street, and it's glare ice on the sidewalk for people walking on there. So I was just wondering if there will be a drain at the end of that.
As soon as he gets it, I'll talk about it here. You can see, for one, and maybe you could point to the chart so I can see here better, that we actually are not going all the way to Main Street. We're stopping specifically a specific area, and you're on the other side. So you're on the north side of the road, correct? Yeah, north side right there. So we're going entirely past your. We are not going all the way, and the reason we're not going all the way to Main is we need to preserve that and have that so we can tie into Main Street when it's reconstructed. It's currently scheduled for 2024. So a few years down the line, that very end of Lake Street would also be tore up and redone as part of that project. Now, yours is done in this particular case. We don't have storm sewer on that end. There's a little bit of a high spot, and it drains down to Main. We're allowing the current system on Main to take care of that for now. If there's anything we need to do 4 years from now, when 2024 comes, we'll address it at that time. But we don't want to build something that we're just going to tear out 4 years from now, so it didn't make any sense.
Another question I have is, the property to the west of me was like a half a lot, and the people bought it so that the one that has the home there also owns that. However, the sewer from Linden Lane comes down through there. And so I was just wondering if the people that live in the home behind me on Linden Lane were aware of what's going on. Are they going to be charged anything? Or will that just be like for my neighbors?
Is that for
If services go through the wall there, yes. Just the services.
Yeah, Linden Lane is a street that's kind of on our radar for some time in a not too distant future. We're looking, the council ultimately may decide to do something up and through there and deal with that. But yes, there would have to be deal with those, it's just a service for them, so we'll have to deal with that cost of that service.
So my neighbors to the west
Yeah.
aren't going to have to pay for that
They're-
because it's going through their property?
No, they only pay for the one, you only pay for the service that services your home.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the council?
Jill Roseno, 543 Lake Street North. Could you go back or forward to where you had the yellow lines going on and
Oh, the right of way?
describe what might be happening right there at the crux of everything?
This one you're talking about?
Correct. 543 Lake Street North.
You know which Lake Street, you know which, right? This is the
Right
very
down
corner.
there.
So you're right
Right.
here.
Right.
Okay.
So that sidewalk that's currently there, is that going to be?
That would be replaced, right? And then the new sidewalk that's being proposed would continue on up the west side of the Elm Street.
Okay. So then our driveway, is that going to be shorter? The apron going into the street?
The question for the audience, will your driveway be shorter? No, the driveway will be exactly the same length. The end would be redone. Someone asked about aprons earlier, so that apron at the end would be replaced as part of this project. The sidewalk through there would be replaced. So basically, if you think about everything kind of from the sidewalk to the road would end up being replaced with the project. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm Barb Carlson. I live at 315 North Elm Street. And question number one, do we have to have a sidewalk? We've never had one. Is there...
Do you want to ask a couple questions and I'll come over there?
Okay, my other question is, I still don't understand how you're going to keep the car wash from washing out the street.
So the first question is whether there needs to be a sidewalk on that side. That is something that's new. That is something that the council is considering. And ultimately, tonight, we would hope to perhaps get some direction from them as to do they wish to continue with putting a sidewalk through there or not, so that we can move forward, assuming they want to move forward with the project as a whole, that whether that's included or whether it's not. In terms of the car wash, yes, we know that there's some erosion that occurs on that driveway. It's not, yeah, and the street through there, it was, right. So this part, as you, I think, saw, we don't really go far enough. That'll be something that'll be dealt with. There's a couple issues with the car wash and some erosion and things that are occurring there that we need to get taken care of working with them, but that will be something we'll have to do with them directly.
So that's going to continue for 4 years?
Well, no, I'm not sure. I would say it's going to last for 4 years, but that we're aware of the issue, and it's something that we need to take up. I mean, the council's hearing what you've said, so that's important.
That was analyzed before they expanded that
Yes.
business,
And it's,
right?
yeah, and it's not so much that, it's really, there's an erosion issue that that the landowner needs to deal with and hasn't as of yet, at least. That's correctable. It just hasn't been corrected.
The city required that?
Well, if the sediment and that is getting into our street, our right-of-way, our storm sewer, we have the ability to go and do some enforcement and make sure things are taken care of. So we'll, the council's listening to you, and I think we'll take a look at that.
One other question. On the corner where Lake Street meets North Elm, it gets very badly potholed out all the time. So after the new project is done, will that be corrected somehow? I don't know if it's the traffic making the turn or if it's the way the water drains or what it is, but it's very bad.
Right. Yes, that's essentially one of the main reasons this project is moving forward, because the roadway is falling apart in through there. That's related to that sub-drainage issue. There's water tables are high in through there, and the structural stability of what's below, kind of what you see on the top, the top only stays that way if the strength and materials that are below it are there, and they stay strong and they stay stable, and we get the water out of them. Currently, we believe they're saturated with soils, with water. That's why we don't have the strength. It can't carry. It's not. It currently, the design, if you will, just by the water, doesn't hold the traffic that's going through there, the weight of the traffic. So we're gonna deal with that by putting in that sand layer below. That's going to take the water out. We're going to wick that away so that layer stays dry, and then everything stays strong and stable, so that the pavement doesn't deteriorate like it is now.
And then the storm sewer will no longer go into the lake.
The storm sewer will continue to go in the lake, but there is proposed to be a storm scepter, which is a treatment device that would be put in there, so that all floatables and all of the small particles will get collected in there. That gets vacuumed out on a periodic basis by the city maintenance department. They clean it out, and that no longer goes into the lake.
Thank you. I would recommend no sidewalk.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the council?
My name's Terry Burton. I own the property on 1124 Beltline Road, the 10th Street project. My question is about the drainage on 10th Street and on the parking lot up there. Well, I tell you what, unless that parking lot's gonna need major drainage work, or it doesn't even pay to put that street in. It boils right out of the side of the hill. I've been there for 15 years. It runs from the parking lot through the ball diamond, down through my property. It also comes out of the side of the parking lot, runs down, across, goes into the storm sewer, down the ditch, and stays there. It runs through, down 10th Street, up to Beltline and backs up. How's that grade gonna be addressed? You know, I think you're gonna blow a bunch of money on that parking lot. I mean, the drainage, I don't think it's a rush project. That needs a lot of work. It was built on a swamp. It's full of clay. Water boils up there all the time. I mean, I think you're gonna blow 400 and some thousand for that parking lot unless that drainage is really, unless you're up there like I am every day and watch the water boil out of there. I don't even know if you guys understand how bad it is. My question is, how's that gonna be addressed? It don't pay to put that street in until that drainage up on top is fixed. Plain and simple.
Yep. And it's one of the things that we know, that whole area was basically built on a swamp.
Built on a swamp, it's full of clay. Water sits and boils right out of the grass.
So, we know that concern. I don't know whether or not putting 4-inch tile spacing through a parking lot is gonna cover the other side of that hill as far as what goes toward his property.
I mean, these guys know they live right across, you know, we're the two property owners basically on there.
Yeah, they got the Sauk field tile, where does that drain right into that hillside?
Right.
You're gonna have to tie that in, tie it too, because it's higher than the street. You know, runs up.
And just to kind of reiterate, you know, with both 10th Street and the parking lot, there's a sand cushion that goes below that. What that is meant to do, so that's where the water can drain through. It'll drain much easier through there than what's currently up there, which is all that clay material. That clay forces the water to the surface because it's the easiest place for the water to go, and it drains out. The sand allows the water to stay in the soil. It runs down to essentially the bottom. Imagine we have a blanket now of sand. Okay, what happens is the water drains to the bottom of it. We tape our drain tile through there. We let it sucks all the water out of there. The water is still running, yes, but it's in a controlled layer. And then our stability for the upper layers of that blanket, our aggregate base and our asphalt, that layer stays dry and stays stable. So that's how it works, not only in the parking lot, but also in the road. Same thing, I don't know if you've ever witnessed or seen like landslides where stuff is moving. Usually that's the same thing. It's related to water that's coming out on the surface. We actually do the same kind of treatments to those. We put a sand layer down in the bottom. Sometimes if it's up on a slope, we put a chimney that essentially is called a chimney. It goes up the slope. And it's to intercept that water, take it down. We essentially have a controlled path for the water versus just coming out to the surface and going through there. And in terms of that other drain tile, yes, you're right, that would be good to tie that drain tile that's currently in there into the system so we can drain all of that out and so it doesn't discharge onto the surface.
How deep is the sand base supposed to be? I mean, you got water boiling up in that whole area.
Do you have
There's three small, yeah, at least. Yeah, I mean,
So, right here shows you a good visual
of what the sand section will look like. So it's here in the middle is our aggregate base, our bituminous, and this is our sand section. Now for a roadway, we typically install the sand section 1.5 foot thick with filter fabric, basically a separation layer, so no clay can come up, just water can come up. So this sand section can take water from any direction, from up above, it can take it from underneath, it can take it from the sides, and then we crown it. We crown our subgrade, so the water, if any water comes into it, it'll drain to the sides, through that fabric, through the sand, and into our drain tile, which for 10th Street, the whole road drains west currently to Beltline Ditch, so that drain tile would follow that slope, or the slope of the road west and get to the ditch, so it would drain out. So, in the same system for the parking lot, we would use that.
The parking lot drains essentially kind of from, you know, northwest to southeast, sort of goes a bit of an angle across there. And imagine, if you can imagine this kind of flat, but now we have the slope of the grade of the parking lot itself. So all this sand cushion, all that water is down below. And we provide, this is essentially a controlled drainage layer. So it takes that water out. It's water that kills the stability of the upper, you know, because this gets all saturated.
The drainage is not cut and dried, like you say. The drainage actually runs through the two ball lanes, between the two ball lanes, like out through my property, and out the driveway, and to the ditch on the outlet, you know. And,
So your drainage from west.
yeah. It all drains, you know, the drainage from up there, a lot of it goes west, believe it or not. Because it just pulls between both ball diamonds and everything else, you know. And I don't think you're gonna get a big enough sand barrier up there to drain, you know, a four inch drain tile is not gonna do it. That's like putting a Band-Aid on it.
Well,
That is not gonna drain.
Well, remember in the parking lot, we have a series of those. In the road, I mean, we couldn't go to a 6-inch. It's virtually not much extra money in order to do that. But there's a lot of water that can run through there, you know, through it. And I know it's hard to believe that, you know, we're essentially on the top of a hill and it's a swamp. There's got to be some sort of you know, whether it's an artisanal type structure that's underneath it that's pumping that water up through there, but that's what's, yeah. Yeah, so, right, so we have to have controlled drainage layer. That's the only way to make this work, because if we allow that water, if we take it to the surface, it just, then all the asphalt just breaks up because there's water all the time on it, so it just doesn't work.
What I'm saying is it doesn't even pay to do the street project until that parking lot area up there is really addressed all the ways.
Okay.
He's got 2 roads, his outline.
Right.
I've got 2, I don't need a back driveway. We're the only 2 driveways on the street.
Can you, if you want to speak, you want to go up to the microphone and tell us name and address so it gets in the record, please?
Bob Sunderman, 1014 Beltline Road. You can see right there, that's my driveway there in the middle. His is on the end there on the west side.
Okay.
I really don't have a need for street access there. I don't have to.
Address your question, really the question is, it's not necessarily for the individuals who happen to live, it is for those who adjacent, but it's also for the traveling public within the city as a whole that drive through there. This is an area that I would strongly believe that as we grow, as development occurs that might jump across Beltline, this will become more of a street that some of that traffic, that access to get across there would be. Be my opinion that it would not be in the city's best interest to consider vacating the street, but that is ultimately the council's decision.
We didn't have an issue closing Oak Street off years ago. That was a nice road to get to town with too. For what reason was that shut down? Put an apartment building in the middle of it?
I cannot answer that question.
I also see on the assessment part of it, where before when you were talking, our portion is higher than the rest of the city. They were at like 35% or whatever. That breakdown that you had, we were at 50. Is that because of?
It's because there's no sewer and water, so that drives the percentages through there.
There's no sewer and water where?
There's no sewer and water with the project, so that would skew the percentages. It's really kind of apples to apples on a percentage basis.
So we pay by the linear foot there?
That's
Our
correct.
assessment costs?
It's sponsored by square foot.
I was just going to add, so it's, for this portion, it is 50/50. Now, a large portion of the assessment cost is for the Civic Arena lot. So if you were to remove that, I showed you that in the last presentation, but for the 3 residents, their total was around 26%, I believe.
Well, I guess that's all I got. I'm just adamant about the fact that it doesn't even pay to touch that street until you get that parking lot area figured out. I mean, I don't think, I heard you say that you're rushing through this, you want to get it while prices are lower. I mean, that's something that's really got to be looked at.
Okay.
I mean, if it takes a couple of years, it takes a couple of years. We can drive on dirt, it's better than the holes we were driving in.
Right, right. Point well taken.
Okay?
Thank you, Jerry.
Yep.
Is there anyone else that needs clarification or needs questions answered? Okay, is there, just before, is anybody else? Okay, go ahead. Doesn't look like anyone else.
Again, Andrew Waldorf, 302 Elm Street North. So the question I had that came up was on Elm Street North, they're going to put in the storm drain where they're going to filter out, essentially filter out solids and things like that. Is there a plan in place to, how will that affect, like if there's any oily waste coming from people's vehicles, like if they're, if they don't do their maintenance and they're dropping oil off their cars and stuff? I don't know what a solid filter that out, that's still going to end up in a lake.
Good point. Glad you asked that. The storm scepter, considering using there actually does deal with those floatables, so those oils and that float. It deals with those and keeps those within that chamber as well, so it doesn't go to the lake as it does currently.
And then my next question is related to the Civic Center. And this is just something that came up as a concerned parent in a way, because my youngest son is in hockey. And any given night you go to a hockey practice or nights that they have games, and you end up seeing a lot of people parking close to the building. And while it may not necessarily be related to this project, and since they're going to be redoing it, I guess from my perspective, I would like the city council to consider having the fire chief or someone take a look at that, just make sure that if people are parking near the building, that they're not parking within a fire lane. And if there are fire lanes, that they are properly marked, because I don't necessarily think they are right now. And there certainly isn't any signs, at least on the south side of the building. So on the south side of the building, people will park closest to the building as far as where the pavement is. And I don't think those are parking spots, but people will still park there. And if there were to be a fire in the building, could that potentially be an issue for the firefighters to get close enough to the building?
Okay.
So if that's something they could look
Point
at
well
as part
taken.
of this.
Yep, we
Thank
can
you.
look at that. Okay, we'll move on to those, oh, go ahead, Dana, I'm sorry.
Dana Boucher, 519 Elm Street South. I have just some questions that came up as I was listening to people and such, so I apologize here. Some of these pertain to the south Elm Street and others are general. When the road is torn out, are the trees, all the boulevard trees going?
It depends on the depth, I suppose.
So with the Elm Street North and Elm Street South, as you can imagine, when we dig the utilities in, we have the sanitary down the center line of the road, water main on one side, a storm sewer on another side, and then we have to build the curb and the boulevards and new sidewalk. So the boulevard trees will come out. We needed them to be gone or removed so we can do the grading work and build things so it drains. So yes.
Those ones that are close to the curb and through those areas, will new ones be allowed?
It's certainly an option if city staff and council wishes to include that in the project. We could do that, yes.
On the intersection by the Ding Dong now, are there sidewalks going in on the other side of Grove Lake? Because I saw some drawn in on that picture.
Everything on the other side really isn't specific for this project. That's looking at a bigger picture that would be done at a later point in time, but that is not. Everything that would be with this project would be on, the west side of Grove Lake and up Elm.
Is it going to be 10 years or 15 years for the payout?
Typically,
Interest rate?
It's usually,
Are we locked in once it starts? Okay. Mr. Yap mentioned that we could sign to not have a sewer stub. Is there, if we have any other, I hate to use the word disputes, but if we have any other concerns and such, who would we contact during the project? Do we contact you, Warren, city?
Go through the administrator.
Okay.
right. Once the project starts, there'll be a project manager that'll be in contact with everybody that's in that construction area, so that you'd be able to do it. But until that happens, I would say you can get a hold of me and I can talk to Vicki, or you can talk to Vicki.
So we would have access for input?
Yes, you'll always have access.
Okay, thank you. On the residential lines now, where is that at? So how far into my property do I have to take care of for this project, and where's that?
Sure. The sewer lines, they're all a little bit different of where they're at. Kind of generally, they're supposed to be in the center of the lot. They sometimes are, sometimes aren't. I don't know if, Chuck, I'm not sure if you know specifically where his is at. I don't know, but, where they go to the right-of-way line. That's where we make those connections at. So in this case, it's behind the sidewalk. So it'd be just on the other side of the sidewalk.
And if we need work on that, I assume from the sidewalk to the house is ours.
Yep.
If we need any replacing, I'm certain I have clay under there. So who would I contract with? Is there help with that?
We can help get you in touch with some of the local plumbers to look at. Sometimes the contractor who's doing the work might be willing to do those. We've had some who have, some who haven't, but that is, once again, a direct, that's not something we get involved with, but you could have the opportunity to have that discussion with them and see if they're willing to do that and what those costs would be. But otherwise, one of the local plumbers would be, we've had them do many, many different services for folks over the years.
But my concern is, getting someone out and then you're closing up the project before they even get to it, And then on the redo of the intersection, is there a traffic taming component to this? Have you looked into that? Is that going to affect traffic flow through that part of town?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say with this, there's a need for traffic taming, as I would define it. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but.
Well, I'm thinking, is it going to discourage people to find a different route through town?
If the offset one may, perhaps, because they may not have that through. That might be just by having a couple of curves, they may decide they don't want to do that and go a different direction. It's hard to say, but that could be a positive for that perspective.
That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the part, is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor or against any of the projects? I think we've heard a lot of it, but is there anyone else that would want to speak in favor or against the projects? If you want to, you can step back up.
Just doing questions.
Okay, all right. Call a third time. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor or against any of the proposals? Okay. Notice that Terry Merton is voting against doing the 10th Street project until the parking lot is taken care of. Okay, with that, our public, go ahead, Dana.
Listen, I've got reservations on this, right? I'm not totally against this. I mean, I'm not going to be hauling my own sewage to the treatment center anytime soon. So I understand, and I understand the conditions of the roads and such. But as far as for Elm Street South, when I asked that question about traffic taming and such, I think one of my feelings is I really don't have a residential street. I have a collector street, I think, because years ago Oak Street was closed, and that pushed traffic onto Elm Street. And then, I think it's 10 years ago, the stop signs were taken off of Elm Street. And so now that becomes, to me, a de facto thoroughfare, because I'm out there in my yard, my garden. I've never seen anyone come down Grove Lake and make that turn on two wheels, but that's not for lack of trying on their part. There's some cars that come flying through there. So so when I look at these costs, I'm thinking, okay, I understand it, I live on the street, but am I buying a thoroughfare for people? So I hope that has some traffic taming, and if it doesn't, but still my concern is how much do we as residents have to pick up for traffic flow in this town because of decisions made years ago, and we were forced into that. So that's my feeling there. Then on the sidewalks, now, people know that, I walk as much as I can. I believe that we need more sidewalks in this town. I'm certainly an advocate for this. But when I look at the cost of replacing these sidewalks, and some of them are in good shape, and given the fact that last year in June, we were given notices to repair our sidewalks, and now 9 months later, they're going to be torn out. That just doesn't seem to pass muster of the kind of common sense I hear about in Sauk Center, that you fixed them, and luckily I didn't spend a lot of money personally, but my neighbors did, and now they're going to be jackhammered out. But my concern about sidewalks in that neighborhood, and this is why I asked the question about Grove Lake sidewalks. My sidewalk is a sidewalk to nowhere. You get to the end of my block, and now you're out in the middle of the road. So I am asked to take care of this infrastructure But it really is just this little loop around my block. You follow what I'm saying? Is that, I mean, if we want to promote walking, well then, I think this is something that the whole town needs to invest in, not just little pockets where you walk. I mean, I should put a sign on my sidewalk that says the end is near, because it literally is. You go 50 feet and you're out in the middle of the road now, walking with traffic. So that concerns me is that I'm gonna have my sidewalks ripped out, I'm gonna replace them. I believe in sidewalks, but it's just gonna end there. And I just wanna point this out. The little triangle park there up on the corner there, when the sewer project was done in 2013, there were sidewalks in that triangle. And they were pulled out. They weren't in the best condition, but they were pulled out. And so when people are concerned about should they have to pay for sidewalks, and the answer seems to be, well, yes, because there's a sidewalk there, we're gonna put a sidewalk in, but yet the city was allowed to pull its own sidewalks out. Does that seem equitable? Does that seem fair? If you want to promote sidewalks in these neighborhoods, and especially on the north end of this project, shouldn't there be sidewalks there as well, instead of sidewalks to nowhere again?
True.
And then my final comment, my final reservation is this square footage assessment. I really think the city needs to provide an incentive for reducing runoff. You know, we have these rain events that have been hitting us the last few years. We're loading up our sewers, and if I have to pay the same as someone who has completely covered the property, and I have open property, I really think there should be an incentive in that, instead of having just square footage is square footage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one quick comment as it relates, just want to clarify. The council hasn't selected which sort of intersection, just to be clear on that. So.
Okay.
Aaron Samvig at 414 Elm Street South. I'm on the opposite side of the street from Mr. Boucher and north of block. I've been quiet this whole time, but some of the comments he made, I just wanted to agree with him. I'm a relative newcomer, lived in our house for about a year and a half now. I've been amazed at the amount of traffic we have on our street. It's 3 or 4 blocks from Sinclair Lewis down to Ding Dong. There's no reason for anybody to be going there residentially, other than, you know, I would guess we've got 20 homes, because there's the church on the north end. You get down to Ding Dong, and then the road turns, it goes around the outpost, and you get down to Getty. My suspicion is that it's people coming from the west on Sinclair, going down to Getty, getting down to the south end of town and skipping Main Street. I don't know what the solution is. I hate speed bumps, but there's a part of me that thinks that maybe that would make sense for some of these sections. I think he said that the stop signs were taken out, and like I said, I'm pretty new to the area, so I can't speak to what it was like before Oak Street. But I do think that there's a significant amount of traffic on a small street. So I just wanted to support the comments that you made to that effect. Also, the sidewalks. I just blew our sidewalk off this morning. I've got a very low guard on that. I get tripped up more on my driveway than I do the sidewalk, and I don't know as far as with the infrastructure and other things if the sidewalk has to come out because of some of the services, but I know on our section, 0 problems with the sidewalk. There's one section that's off by maybe 1/4 of an inch. Otherwise, our sidewalk is level with the lawn. We've got no problems, and that's what I've noticed because we walk with our kids a lot. That's a good portion of South Elm. The sidewalks are in good condition. When you get down by Ding Dong and that corner, it is weird because the sidewalk just ends, but the sidewalks are generally, I think, in pretty good condition. So.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wants to speak in favor or against? Seeing no one, our public hearing is now closed. We will now reconvene our regular council meeting. We will take action later tonight. Reports and presentations, Police Department. Brian?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Activity report for December 2019. Some of the numbers we had 21 alarm calls, we did 11 motorist assist, we did 20 personal assist, we did 68 business assist, we did 18 assists for other agencies, we had 12 citizen contact calls, we issued 9 citations for driving after revocation or cancellation or suspended license. We had 17 matter of information calls. We had 28 medicals. We gave 7 citations for no driver's license. We had 17 patrols at the school. We did 47 patrols at Walmart. We had 20 suspicious calls. We had 6 thefts. We gave out 172 verbal warnings. So we had total number of calls of 440, 172 verbal warnings for a total of 612 of total activity. Comparing that to November, very similar numbers. Everything was down a little bit. And comparing it to 2018, it was everything was down a little bit too. So very close in numbers for that. Looking at the year-ending report, probably having that ready the last meeting in February there. So hopefully you got all the numbers and everything organized so that we can get that end of the year report out for 2019. And then probably upcoming, of course, looking at the body cam policy, getting that finalized and approved. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Public Works report, Ben?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The new skid loader has arrived. We started to use that today for snow removal. The Toolcat is currently getting some repairs done under warranty. They did loan us our old Toolcat back, so at least we had one to use in the meantime. It will be back tomorrow morning, though, fixed, I heard today, so that's good news. From Christmas to the first of the year, we had some really poor weather for making ice. The figure skating rink was very limited use during this time. We tried to make the best of it, but when it's 30 and it rains, it was pretty tough. Once the temperatures dropped, we were able to get both rinks smooth, and they're both open and available for skating now. We worked on prepping the campground and park for the arrival of the snowmobile race that was held January 4th. We removed all the holiday lights and decorations. They were put away for the year. There's about 100 LED lights that are left to be installed in the street lights, and that's all on the north end of town now. So basically everything south of the bridge is completed. The PUC assisted in repairing some hanger lights at the airport this week. Sidewalks in town are being an issue for us. There's quite a bit of ice on them. We have lined up a contractor to start working on spreading a salt sand mix on the sidewalks, which have a lot of ice coverage. The plan is to start next week once this weekend snowstorm is over and people have had a chance to clear the snow from their sidewalks so we can start taking care of those issues. Whenever the weather warms up and loosens some of the ice that's on the roadways, we'll work on getting rid of that as well. Until then, we'll continue to keep things sanded. And the arena has a very busy schedule this month. There's not a day that there's not something scheduled up there. So the Hockey Association is doing a good job of having a lot of practices and tournaments. So things are going smoothly up there right now.
Okay. Questions? Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
EDA report.
So the EDA met in regular session on Wednesday, January 8th. Kevin Uphoff remains the president or the chairman of the board. He's been the chairman for several years. We did get a short update from the chamber regarding the dinner and an update from Sauk Center Opportunities. The Pangburn Estates plat, the association covenants and everything and declaration have been signed and sent to the Secretary of State. We're still waiting for the owner to sign the actual plat itself so it can go in for recording, and then that project will be done. We still have that small cities tax increment proposal down by the McDonald's area that we're working on, sending some numbers back and forth with the developer to see if that's going to come to fruition or not. And we did have a new proposal that hadn't been heard yet for all or half of the 59-acre parcel by the truck stop. So they talked about that. The main focus of that was the jobs that would be created with that project. And then also the EDA was invited to the Western Stern CEO Program Gala, which is January 23rd, and any of the council members that might want to attend to that, I can send out the invite to you as well. And that is a fundraiser for the Western Stern CEO Program. So we have no action from the EDA for tonight's meeting.
Questions? Park Board?
The Park Board met in regular session on Tuesday, January 7th. They welcomed their new member, Logan Gruber. That was his first meeting. They elected Ryan Relke as the chairman for 2020, and they also reviewed and affirmed their bylaws. They did receive a donation of kayaks and paddleboards from Center Care Employees Wellness Committee to be available to the public, so that'll be forthcoming to the city for acceptance when we actually receive them. And then we received an update on the campground online reservation system, which has been going well. And also they have some recommended updates to the campground reservation policy. They're going to be reviewing that updates at their next meeting. And then we did, they were informed of the DNR grant of $29.5 to plant trees lost to EAB. And they did receive an update on the Snowdown Snowmobile event. And then one additional thing is they were also, the Park Board was informed and awarded a grant for also $29,500, an additional grant toward the fitness park. So the fitness park fundraising, I think, is now at $244,500. Wow. So they're doing very well.
Airport Board report.
The Airport Board met in regular session on Wednesday, January 8th. Tom Winker was voted as chairman. Mike Bouchard is the vice chair. And then Ben gave his Public Works report. The entrance road grant closeout has been submitted, and the final funding should be received soon. We were hoping to have it by the end of the year, but I got an email on December 24th that they were going to start working on processing it. We'd sent it to them the 1st of October to MnDOT. The zoning ordinance update is continuing, and you'll have a little information on that later in the agenda. They are consideration of a building of a new 80 by 80 box hangar for our FBO during federal fiscal year 2020. That would be funded 90% by the FAA, 5% by MnDOT, and 5% by the city. So when we can capture that high of a percentage of grant, it makes it attractive to do. That's something the Airport Board continues to talk about. And they did submit items to for the state funding portion for state fiscal year 2021, which is 70% funded by the state, which would be the AWAS relocation and the door replacement on the FBO hangar, T-hanger door cable straps, and some insulation. And they did review the 5-year federal entitlement summary with the yearly allocation and loan paybacks just to make sure we can make these projects continue to happen. And they also have no action for you tonight at the meeting.
Okay. Questions? Okay. Water and Light meeting, I attended that on Monday night. The new chairman is Ted Spanier. They changed their meeting time from 4 o'clock to 4:30 now to make it more accessible for members to make it along with the public. They also, it was an organizational meeting basically since it was the first meeting for them this year. They are also, by my request, after each meeting, they're going to send a monthly report over for Vicki to read in or myself to let us know what's happening, what they're working on, and open the communication lines up a little more than what we've had in the past. So, and then if something is going on at the council level, that we do the same in return. So, if there's any questions, otherwise we'll move on to action items. Approve resolution 2020-08, ordering improvement to 2020 projects.
So if the city, based on tonight's hearing, desires to continue moving forward with the improvement of the projects, it should adopt a resolution ordering that improvement move forward. Any modifications to the project should be outlined prior to adoption. You had a couple things. There was a question on the arena parking lot, a question on should we do 10th Street. There was a question on what should that intersection look like at the south of Elm. Should there be sidewalks? There's some of those conversational items that the engineer needs to know in order to move forward with the project. This resolution will authorize next steps, which include to complete the plans, to approve the plans and authorize the bids, and I put February 5th there. I think February 19th, after I talked to Keith, is a more realistic number for them to complete the plans. And then we would go out to advertise the bids, and our goal would be to award the bid probably the end of April or the 1st of May, just so that we can get the project underway. The construction would be during the summer of 2020. The final assessment hearing and adoption of the assessment wouldn't actually happen until September, and then certification in November, because there's quite a bit of things that will occur to the assessment. There's going to be some lot combinations, and some sewers won't be in, some will be in, and so any of those changes. So we don't adopt the assessment at this time. We adopt them based on real numbers later. So I have Resolution 2020-08, ordering the improvement of the 2020 street project. This does include everything that you saw up there. It includes 10th Street, it includes the arena, it includes the Elm Street South and the Elm Street North and Lake Street. So if you want to remove any of those at this time, now is the time to do that. However, we do have the next time that you would discuss this when you approve the plans. That's one additional time that we back out. And then that you have the opportunity to take something out. And then also when we award bids, we have the opportunity to take things out. You just know that the further we get along with the project, the more money we incur with the engineering. Not that that's a bad thing, because that can always go on the shelf and pick up at a later date, just so you're aware of that as well. So I don't know, Keith, do you have anything additional that you need to know?
I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay, well, basically, as we get into it, it's probably easier to handle it with the 3 sections. I think, to start with North Elm and Lake Street, as far as, what our wishes there, do we want to go with the 5-foot easement, or right-of-way, or the 10-foot right-of-way? And whether or not we want to stay with the idea of sidewalk going up the west side. I think those were the 3 concerns that we had.
So the easements related to the street width of Elm from 36, 32.
Right. So if you,
So we could
if
keep
the
it-
5-foot easement, then you go to 32-foot street.
Right.
10-foot easement will let you do a 36-foot street.
And that
But
road
it-
right now is a 36. Okay. So we need a 10-foot
To maintain the current
to
width.
maintain the
Okay.
current size. Okay.
So the 5-foot easement would be sidewalk with a 32-foot roadway, would that be
Right.
correct? Okay,
Yeah, so we'd be making the road 4 feet narrower,
correct.
and we
Okay.
could cause parking issues.
I know in meetings with, I've gone to an invited meeting up at the hospital, and there's future discussion of expansion of the nursing home, which would take away extended parking on that end as well. So I think maintaining the width of the road for parking especially is going to be necessary,
Okay,
at least on that end of the road, to be able to park on both sides.
right. Okay. So consensus that we go with leave the road the same width at 36 feet and go with the 10-foot right
Yep.
away?
That'd be my thought, yes.
Okay. Sidewalk on the west side.
Yes.
I think so.
I think,
Okay, basically it's silly to
Yes.
have like a sidewalk to nowhere, but everything is a step-by-step process to get everything connected, so, okay, so sidewalk. Anything else on that north project?
I guess just one question, Ben, you might be able to touch on this with the road, doing maintenance, we've got the runoff. Well, what are we seeing as far as like major issues? I mean, are we gonna spend money in 4 years, we're gonna have some damage to our roadway potentially?
You mean on the north
Like
end?
with the runoff, yeah, on Lake Street where the draining from
Oh,
the.
coming off the,
Car
Coming
wash.
off the car wash, I mean, I guess I haven't been past there, what are you seeing from your guys' point of view?
Yes, I mean, it's an issue now, but like Keith was saying, we're stopping short of that, so we're not touching that section of roadway at all, so that water.
Okay, so it
that
won't
water
affect
runs
the new
towards
stuff.
71, it's not
Oh,
running
okay.
towards the new
Okay.
section, so it shouldn't be an issue.
All right.
if we come up short, then it won't affect anything that we do, and we won't be tearing anything new out because of the 71 project.
Okay, all right.
And we are having conversations with the new owner of the car wash up there, because when that originally was constructed and approved, and that pond, or that driveway was supposed to kind of slant toward the side, and what happened when it got put in, it went, shed straight down to the highway, so, to the roadway. And so, of course, that happened, and the concrete was already in, and the owner at the time, we weren't able to resolve it, so, you know, we'll be having conversations here, if there's something we can do partway down to stop that water and to get it directed across the road and get it into their storm pond. You know, those are all things that we're working on, so perhaps we'll be able to address the issue before it gets to the road.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. South Elm, those 2 blocks, my personal feeling is water utilities asked us to look at helping them get that fixed to keep any other potential. The only question that I'm looking at is that intersection, which design we want to go with. And I heard all the concerns and I recognize all of that. I think if we did do that one design where there's that little island that we maintain on the north side of it.
Option 2?
I think that was one.
Yeah, or that was option 1, I think.
Where it
wasn't
came out further onto Grove Lake?
Yeah, it didn't line up with 6th Street.
So that was option 2 then. Pretty sure that was option 2.
Was it?
Okay. Yeah, that one there, it didn't line up with 6th Street after, you know, of course, everything on the east side of Grove Lake will be a future project, but I'm thinking like, we heard residents talk about speed, and if they gotta come up to that corner and stop, they're not getting that straight shot through.
Yeah.
I do agree on the pedestrian safety thing too.
Plus, it's easier to plow.
Yeah.
From
Yeah, I
what
think
I
that-
understand, it's easier for road maintenance and plowing.
Yeah.
And it gives us a,
perpendicular for plow.
yeah.
Right. So, I don't know what the council's wishes are, is that,
That's what
Yeah.
I'd go with
Yeah,
right there.
I think option 2.
That was-
This
Yeah.
year option, which
Yep.
was
okay,
better safety features, I think was in your guys' pros and cons. I think the safety, and then for better road maintenance that Ben highlighted, I think that makes more sense.
We can deal with this piece at a
Future.
point in time when
Right.
we think it's appropriate.
Okay.
yeah, one minute, because that's gonna be a future project, and I don't even know when that could possibly happen.
I think one of the things that we didn't really address too much, but was brought up about the condition of the sidewalks, and how, remember when we did Ash Street, and we did an analysis, and we would cut out all the bad spots, and cut out all the spots for driveways, and cut out all the spots for services, and then we had a real patchwork, so the council decided later to just go take it all out, because it was more cost-effective just to put all new than to try to save sections. I don't know if that's something that's applicable in this situation, because when you look at how many services that are going to go through and how many cuts we're going to have already, then you have sidewalks that are brand new, sidewalks that are 20 years old, sidewalks that are 5 years old. And if you just wanted to affirm that if we're going to do the sidewalk, it's all going to come, or do you want to relook at the piecemeal part of it?
And it's all good points, and that's what we came to. I was I was on the council when the Ash Street went in. And up on the north end on that project, on that 2-phase, we really didn't, we went along with everything had to be new because of that piecemeal, and I have to tend to agree that we need to keep that status going.
Consistent.
Because basically, you're gonna have 10 feet of new sidewalk, then a new chunk for a driveway, and then
Yeah.
5 feet, and then that's where the service went through, and every time you leave pieces behind, the chance of it cracking when you're going through it, or the extra time and labor to cut it, to make it straight edge, and if it buckles, you're looking at possible a lip and trip hazard, and then they're out there having to repair it at their cost besides, so. I don't know what the rest of the council, we
Just replace
do
it.
Just
Yeah.
replace 100%, okay.
Yep.
Then moving up to 10th Street and the arena parking lot, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, there's been something about the whole project from the beginning that just hasn't felt good. I understand it needs to be done. it's just such a huge project, and it's solely city as far as the parking lot. But then Terry comes in and addresses the issue with what is actually happening with the water up there. And I don't live up there to know, but he's been dealing with it for 15 years. So I understand, you know, it's your job as an engineer to address those issues. But we thought we addressed it when we paved 10th Street 10 years ago, and we just ripped it up.
Go ahead.
If I may just comment, I mean, unfortunately, yes, the road was redone not that long ago, but unfortunately, the water issue wasn't dealt with.
So who was our engineer at that time?
That was WSN. That was before our time,
Right.
Thankfully.
I was going to put you on the hot seat there for a second.
But yeah, you know, it's unfortunate, but something should have been done differently in the past. And, you know, I don't like to throw people under the bus, but, you know, it probably should have been dealt with and thought about, you know, whatever that was 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago now, and it wasn't. And truly getting the water out of there is the solution for that. Now, in terms of things in the ball diamonds, and, you know, they're doing really the same things there. They're drain tiling, trying to get the water out of there. In a road situation, parking lot situation, you can't let that water come to the surface. That's what destroys our roadways. So we have to have that layer that wicks that waterway and get it out. That's really the only solution. Otherwise, if we don't do that, we're better off not doing anything because we're just wasting our money. It's going to fall apart. You know, the problem we have now, like in the parking lot, is it's so bad now, even to try and patch it becomes difficult because there's just nothing left to patch to. There's nothing solid up there any longer.
We've done previous projects where like here we propose a half sand section where we've done a 3-foot subcut, build 3 feet of sand to handle a lot of drainage, which should be more just that area, but even worse. So it's a common practice to handle that stuff.
Have you covered the amount of area with tile that we're looking at and have seen it? I mean, what kind of a lifespan are we looking at? That's just my fear, is like we're doing this without knowledge of how long it's going to last and spending a bunch of money to do it.
Sure. So our design, I mean, we're under the gun to design for a 40-year life of our roads, and so it has that design life, that road section, and that subgrading section has that.
You know, in the parking lot areas, we feel, as we mentioned, it's about 50-foot spacing in between. We believe that is an appropriate spacing to be able to take that water out of there. We are going to get some recommendations from our soils folks here any day now. So it's possible we could add a little bit. We'll get their recommendations, see if they want to do a little bit more, if they think that's appropriate. But the general approach is, I truly believe, is the correct one. The issue might be is whether perhaps we need to make them slightly closer and maybe another line of those, of the drains that go through that to wick that waterway. But we'll be getting those recommendations here shortly. We had hoped to get them before this meeting, but unfortunately we didn't.
Okay, one question. If we leave the parking lot out of it and we only do the road, is there going to be water seepage out of that parking lot area that's going to come down and affect the road, or is the drain tile that's running in the curb going to take care of that?
So that water in that hill that runs laterally in probably every direction. So any water that hits that sand section in that roadway will get out of that drain tile, no matter where it comes from.
Okay.
It will handle that.
But I would say, I think there's no question, if we are intercepting some of that water in the parking lot, that water is going to end up in that same soil section in the, that sand section in the street. So it would definitely be a benefit to be intercepting that water as well. But the other things we can, if you wish us to, we could continue working through it. I think, as stated earlier, I don't think anything that we do is a throwaway for that. We don't have to ultimately move forward with that, but if you want to keep moving forward and exploring, getting those soils recommendations. We'll certainly bring that back to the council right away and see if there's anything else that may say, hey, let's time out on that. We have the opportunity to still do that as we move forward, but you know, it's entirely your decisions how you want to move forward on this.
Okay. Any other comments? Does the council want to keep proceeding, get more soil borings or whatever for the parking lot area, and have them bring that back before we take action as far as, you know, we include it in the project, but we always can delete it when they bring us back more information. Personally, right now, I'm thinking about not doing the parking lot at all, because we also have the possibility of a roof on that hockey arena that's going to need to get replaced. And if we spend all this money on a parking lot and then we have a leaky roof, we're really kind of wasting our money then, too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I guess my thought would be if as a council, we're not thinking we're going to move ahead with it, even after we have them do it, we can save them the steps of doing the additional engineering at this point. I think the parking lot personally should actually come probably before the roadway. You know, it's city property and it provides economic value to this town. As mentioned, the Hockey Association has had a tournament every weekend, the entire month of January. Teams from, I know there was a team from International Falls in town just this past weekend. And I know one night after a tournament, went out to one of the restaurants, they said they almost ran out of food, they had lines out the door, you know, these things. So it's contributing economic value that, you know, we're gonna pass that cost on to the taxpayers. We look at about 144,000, I think, is our share of that 197 on 10th Street. And that's, I mean, it's a nice to have road, but I don't know that it's a necessity. As the homeowner said, we don't really need it. And again, I think the Bowers on the corner lot, we're gonna get $21,000 and they're just along the roadway. You know, I think if we're not gonna do them both, I'd probably say let's just skip them both at this point, personally, because I think the maintenance costs for leaving the gravel, we've reclaimed the road, is fairly minor. I mean, the cost we're gonna spend just to maintain it during these summers here is gonna be far less than spending $197,000. So that'd be my thought.
any other comments? I have to tend to agree with Joe, because basically, I think if we waited with this project and just saved the money on it now, like you said, and next spring, when the snow is gone and we actually can see maybe there's other issues of water that we don't even know about. Yeah, the ball fields are tiled, but maybe there's another spot we should be running a tile line into to capture it before we do the parking lot, and then we find out, geez, we should have went up here and caught that, because now we just created another problem because we're doing this late fall, winter time trying to solve a problem that maybe we can live with for a couple more years. So, someone want to make a motion to drop it or keep it or do it the road and not the parking lot, or vice versa, or just general consensus that on any, it's up to you.
I'll make a motion to move forward with the projects with the Elm Street North and Elm Street South projects. At this time, we will cut the 10th Street South and Civic Arena parking lot from the 2020 project proposal.
And I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Joe. We have a second by Heidi. Any other questions, concerns? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Thank you. 7B, approve resolution 2020-09, appointing fire department officers and appointing acting mayor. So we'll be changing the title of that resolution.
So at the time you made your annual appointments on January 2nd, the fire department had not yet met to make recommendations to the positions. They've now met and recommend the following. They recommend for Fire Chief Steve Moritz, First Assistant Jeff Romanchenko, Second Assistant Ben Klink, Secretary Treasurer David Moritz, and Training Safety Officer Wayne Senst. And that is Resolution 2020-09, appointing those fire department officers. And then the mayor wishes to add to that to appoint an acting mayor, because David Thomas was our acting mayor. And that way this person can step up in the event Warren isn't able to be at a meeting.
And for that position that I'm going to recommend that we put Heidi in as acting mayor in case I'm absent. So with that, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2020-09?
I'll make the motion.
A motion by Diane, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries 4 in favor, none against. 7C, approve Resolution 2020-10, authorizing sale of playground equipment.
So the city council previously authorized the sale of the old wooden play structure that was taken out at J.C. Park. The purchaser did not pick up the equipment. We were unable to reach him, so it was re-advertised. We have a new purchaser, Francisco Lopez, and he is offered to purchase for $425. So that is Resolution 2020-10, authorizing the sale of the playground equipment.
Questions, comments? Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2020-10?
I'll make the motion. Better grab that quick.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 4 in favor, none against. 7D, approve Resolution 2020-11, authorizing quotes for trailer.
So during the 2020 budget process, the council reviewed future purchases for the city. One item for discussion was the conversion of the 1975 steamer truck used to thaw storm sewers to a tow-behind unit. This would entail purchasing a trailer and moving the steamer equipment off the truck and onto the trailer. Then that truck would be taken out of service or sold, and the proceeds would go toward that trailer. In addition, then we would no longer have that annual insurance. Public Works Supervisor is requesting to move forward with obtaining quotes for the purchase. The preferred timeline would be to have the new trailer in service prior to spring thaw. That is when we use it the most, is when the ground starts thawing out. The trailer design would be a 16-foot trailer similar to a car hauler or a skid loader trailer for an estimated cost of $5,000. Conversion of the equipment could cost about $500 for materials and supplies, which would be completed by staff. This is a purchase through the Stormwater Utility Fund, actually. So if you looked in your budget, it wasn't in the street department. It's actually in the Stormwater Utility Fund where we budgeted for that. So we're looking to approve Resolution 2020-11, authorizing the solicitation of quotes for the trailer.
Comments, questions? Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2020-11?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Joe.
I'll second.
Second by Diane. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. 7E, appoint Public Works seasonal employee.
So we had advertised, or we had a seasonal employee to work at the arena that the council had appointed earlier last fall. For health reasons, he's been unable to work, and so that was re-advertised. And we do have a new recommendation, and the recommendation is to appoint Jake Fredericks. And this would be a seasonal wintertime appointment that he would work in the arena, but we could use him in the outdoor rink or to do sidewalks if we needed to. And the recommendation is to appoint him effective immediately, and that would start at step 1 of the seasonal pay scale. So that would be Jake Fredericks.
Questions, comments? Do I have a motion to approve the appointment of Jake Fredericks?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Heidi, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Unfinished business, advertisement for city council member.
So an advertisement has been posted in the Sauk Herald and on the city website and Facebook for that a vacancy exists on the city council. The position will be open until it is filled, and it will be filled by a vote of the city council. Prospective candidates can apply at City Hall by completing a nomination form. The candidate must be a resident of the city and able to vote in our elections. The council will select a member from the applicants. The new member would serve for the balance of 2020, and they could run in the November general election if they wish to keep the term from 21 to 24. So this is information only. I do have a couple applicants already, and so we'll go through those and bring them forward to the city council to select somebody. You know, there is not any hard and fast rule of how fast or when. If you don't have a candidate you like, there's no requirement to fill it right away. If you have a great candidate, you can fill it as soon as you want, so there's not a rule that says how soon you have to do it. So I would typically say in this situation, there's quite a bit of the year left. You probably want to put someone in that position, but if it got later in the year, July or August, you know, there's not very many months left before the term expires. So I think we won't have any trouble filling the position at this point. So I will probably bring those to the mayor, and then if he wants it to go to a committee, or if we want to bring the applicants back to all the council members, that's something that we can do.
Okay. Any comments on that? Okay. Public hearing on airport zoning ordinance update.
Finally, that we've been waiting for over a year for comments from MnDOT, but the airport zoning has been reviewed now by MnDOT staff, and they provided comments back for updates. Those updates were sent back to MnDOT again for final review. So now that those comments have been addressed, we'll be getting their final approval that they're okay with what we're proposing. And then we'll be calling a public hearing to consider that ordinance, and that's going to be sometime in February. And that'll be the public hearing of the Joint Airport Zoning Board, which is 2 people from the city, 2 people from the township, and 2 people from the county. And they will make that final recommendation. So we're finally getting that done. And the timing is really good because the legislature just passed some rulings that all airports need to update their zoning ordinance. So we just got in under the wire.
Okay. Brings us, we have no new business. Takes us to our consent agenda. We have a schedule of claims, unpaid claims of $183,627.83 for a total of the same, because we have 0 on the paid claims. December checks, paid claims / payroll of $616,747.92. We have a 2019 contribution list.
That didn't make the packet, so cross that off.
Okay. All right. Gambling application for exempt permit request from Sauk Center Lions Club for a raffle on August 2nd, 2020, and pull tabs from July 31st to August 2nd, 2020 at the Stearns County Fairgrounds. We also have a gambling application for an exempt permit request from the Sauk Center Area Chamber of Commerce for a raffle, bingo, and paddle wheels on April 18th, 2020 at the Sauk Center Civic Arena. We have gambling application for exempt permit request from the Holy Family School for a raffle on March 1st, 2020 at Holy Family School. And Sauk Center Youth Hockey Association is requesting that a premise permit be issued to them to conduct pull tab gambling at Seed Entertainment LLC, doing business as American Tap and Eatery, located at 1225 Timber Lane Drive, Resolution 2020-12. Is there any questions or comments about the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, do we have a second?
No second?
Second by Heidi. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Informational items, HRA opening.
Just have the one informational item. The HRA board, actually, their board runs from April 1st to March 31st. The term of Diane Lycum will expire on March 31st, so we'll be placing a notice in the Sauk Herald regarding the vacant seat. So that's the one board we have that the term is off from everybody else. Just information if anybody has interest in that board.
Okay. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Joe. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Meeting adjourned.